The autumn of 1883 settled over Massachusetts with an unforgiving cold that seemed to seep into the marrow. Beneath the carriage wheels, brittle leaves crackled as Jonathan Moorfield traveled down a winding path through a forest cloaked in gloom. Overhead, clouds hung low and heavy, a grim prelude to the darkness that lay ahead. Pulling his threadbare coat tighter, Jonathan shivered. Once a man of stature and elegance, at 35 he now wore the weariness of disgrace etched across his face. The disgrace he carried from Boston, allegations of fraud, outraged clients, and financial ruin still haunted him. His once celebrated legal career had crumbled in a matter of weeks. At last, the Moorfield estate emerged through the trees, spectral in the dying light. Constructed in 1790 by his great-great-grandfather, the Victorian mansion loomed atop a rise, its turrets stabbing at the gray sky. Shuttered windows and boarded apertures gave it the appearance of a long-abandoned sentinel watching his arrival. "We're here, sir," the elderly coachman announced solemnly. "Moorfield Mansion." He stepped down with his lone suitcase in hand. "What do I owe you?" The coachman shook his head slowly. "Already paid, sir. A Mr. Thaddeus Green handled the fare. Said the keys under a flower pot near the door." He hesitated, casting a wary glance at the mansion. "If I may, sir, the townsfolk talk. They say it's best not to linger here after sundown." Jonathan offered a faint smile. "Just village superstition, I presume." "Maybe so. Still, no one from the Moorfield line has met a peaceful end in many a year." The old man urged his horses forward. "God keep you, sir." The carriage rolled away, leaving Jonathan alone in front of the foreboding structure that was now his last refuge. With effort, he pushed open the rusting iron gate, its screech cutting through the silence. The path was overgrown and littered with loose stones. Gazing at the facade, he noted the Gothic architecture, weather-worn gargoyles and intricate carvings on the pillars. True to the coachman's words, a bronze key rested beneath a lifeless planter. Holding it in his palm, he paused. A strange resistance seemed to hum in the air, as though the house itself rejected him. "Foolishness," he whispered, and fitted the key into the lock. The front door groaned open, revealing a vast, dim entry hall. The stench of mold, rot, and something else, something harder to name, welcomed him in. He placed his suitcase on the cracked marble tiles and closed the door behind him, sealing his fate. Filtered light from grimy windows cast muted patterns on the shrouded furniture. Each piece was cloaked in white cloth, like long-dead spirits awaiting his return. Portraits of ancestors, their faces lost in shadow, peered down at him from the walls. He located a tarnished oil lamp on a table and struck it to life, its flame offering a modest glow. He roamed the first floor, parlor, dining room, and a once proud library, all reeked of neglect and age. In the kitchen, some supplies were stacked neatly: preserved goods, bread, cheese, and the half-empty whiskey bottle. Back in the hall, a door beneath the staircase stood ajar. Lamp raised, Jonathan stepped closer. It revealed a staircase that descended into the shadows.
A sudden thud upstairs made him freeze. The flame quivered in his hand, casting erratic shapes on the walls. "Who's there?" he called, voice echoing. No answer came, save for the groaning of the old timbers. He ascended the stairs carefully, each tread moaning underfoot. The hallway upstairs was lined with closed doors. The first on the right gave way easily. Inside was a large bedroom, the master suite by all appearances. A sheet-covered canopy bed dominated the space. At the window's side desk, books and papers lay in a stack. Jonathan examined them. Diaries from 1795, written by his ancestor Elijah Moorfield. Flipping through brittle pages, unsettling phrases leapt out. The visions persist, faces shift in the dark, voices crawl through the walls. Elizabeth believes I'm losing my mind, but I saw what lies beneath this house. Shivering, Jonathan shut the book. Lying beside the journals was an envelope addressed in ornate penmanship. He tore it open. "Dear Mr. Moorfield, as the legal administrator of your family's estate, I must inform you of matters that could not be conveyed through standard letters. Moorfield Mansion holds a deeply troubled past. I urge you to study your ancestors' writings before making any decisions about your residence. Medical documents are in the first-floor study and may provide clarity. I will visit town next week and welcome your inquiries. Until then, I advise caution, especially after dark. Yours sincerely, Thaddeus Green, Attorney." Jonathan read the letter again, unease twisting in his gut. What was so grim about his lineage that warranted such a note? A sudden cold gust stirred the room, and the flame danced wildly. The ragged curtains flared as if touched by invisible hands. Jonathan thought he saw a pale shape in the window, watching. But when he approached, the yard outside was empty. Night had fallen over the estate. That first night, a storm gathered on the horizon, and sleep eluded him. Stretched on the dust-ridden bedspread, Jonathan heard the old house breathe, the wind slipping through broken panes, the floorboards aching, and worse, a soft shuffling, like something dragging itself across the hallway. Near the edge of sleep, a whisper stirred the silence. It said his name. Morning broke with a faint gray hue slipping past the grime-smeared glass. Jonathan woke with a jolt, disoriented, until memory settled over him. Still dressed in yesterday's clothes, he found the diaries strewn across the bed.
He ate sparingly, then made his way to the study mentioned by Thaddeus. The room was lined with tall bookshelves and anchored by an oak desk. He rifled through drawers until he found a weathered leather folder. Medical documents. The first, dated 1802, detailed Elijah Moorfield's descent. Classic paranoia. The patient insists beings dwell within the mansion's walls. Reports auditory hallucinations and shadowy figures. He has grown obsessed with the basement, claiming it hides the origin of the Moorfield curse. The report grew darker. Elijah's violence toward his wife during a breakdown, and his confinement in the attic under the care of nurses. Next came a report from 1835, this time about Jonathan's great-grandfather, Jeremiah. Jeremiah displays deterioration mirroring that of his father. Symptoms began around age 35. Hallucinations, paranoia, aggression. Curiously, his delusions echo Elijah's, despite never reading his journals. Jonathan's skin prickled. He, too, was 35. He continued reading. The same fate had claimed Nathaniel and William Moorfield. In 1865, his father hanged himself in the attic after murdering 2 servants. Jonathan shoved the papers away in horror. No wonder his mother had fled with him as a child, leaving behind the mansion and the pain. No wonder she refused to speak of it. A loud noise interrupted his thoughts. Something heavy had fallen upstairs. He rushed up and found a painting toppled in a distant room. Flipping it over, he stared into the painted face of his father, William, grim and intense, his eyes seeming to track every move. As Jonathan set the portrait back into place, he noticed a small hidden door behind a wardrobe. Dragging it aside with effort, he uncovered a narrow entry to a hidden office. Inside sat only a desk and chair. On the table, he found more. Jonathan eased into the creaky chair, its worn fabric sagging beneath him, and opened the final diary belonging to his father. The year etched on its leather cover read 1865, the year William died. March 10th, 1865. The voices won't quiet down. They scratch at my thoughts. Sleep is a luxury I no longer possess. They whisper from below, beckoning me into the basement. I hold firm, but the pull is growing stronger. I remember my father and what he became when he finally descended. Elizabeth urges me to seek treatment, but what use are doctors when the illness isn't of the body? This is no fever. This is the Moorfield curse, inherited and ancient, rooted in the very soil of this land. I uncovered the original deeds. Elijah, in 1790, traded for this land against the urgent pleas of the native tribe that occupied it. They described a place where the veil thins, where old forces slumber in the dark beneath our feet. Elijah, ever the skeptic, dismissed them. He built this house, digging deep into the ground. It was there he encountered the first stone, dark, lightless, unnatural. That same stone now summons me in dreams and in waking. From that point on, the entries dissolved into fragments, deranged observations of creeping shadows, and whispered promises of ancient secrets. The last message, scrawled barely legibly 3 days before William's death, read simply, "I can no longer resist. I must go down." Jonathan snapped the diary shut, his fingers trembling. The light outside had dimmed, stretching the shadows across the office in long, thin streaks. He felt compelled to see the basement for himself. He moved through the house in silence, stopping in the kitchen to light the lamp. Sunlight filtered through the windows like blood through gauze, washing the walls in crimson. The door beneath the staircase groaned as he opened it. Stale air greeted him, damp and heavy with the earthy scent of decay. And something else, faint but unmistakable. Blood. Holding the lamp high, Jonathan took his first step downward. The stone walls were slick with moss. Strange markings appeared as he descended, etched symbols carved by no language he could recognize. The basement opened into a series of rooms. The first held dusty glass jars and deteriorating crates. The second, disturbingly, resembled a lab, littered with archaic medical instruments and vials filled with unknown liquids. But it was the third chamber that drew him still. A raised altar stood at the center of the stone chamber, cold and ominous. Upon it sat a black stone that swallowed the lamp's light, a pulsing, uneven surface like living obsidian. The circle surrounding it glowed faintly with the same symbols he'd seen on the steps. At its center, bloodstains long dried but deeply absorbed into the stone floor. Suddenly, a blast of icy air blew out the lamp, plunging him into darkness. In the pressing silence, he heard it, a voice so close it could have been inside him. "Welcome back, Moorfield. We've been waiting for you." Blinded and panicked, Jonathan scrambled backward, tripping and feeling invisible hands brushing at his legs. He clawed his way to the stairs, heart slamming in his chest, and threw himself into the entrance hall. He slammed the basement door shut and turned the key with shaking hands. He leaned against the wall, breath catching in his throat. Outside, the night had fallen completely. The house was quiet again, but Jonathan could feel it. He was not alone anymore. That night, barricaded in his room with a chair pressed against the door, the footsteps returned. They were louder now, more deliberate, and when exhaustion finally claimed him, his dreams were filled with the faces of his ancestors, all standing around that black altar, their expressions twisted in rapture and dread as they bled willingly for the stone. When morning arrived, a dense fog had smothered the estate, clinging to the trees like gauze over a wound. Jonathan awoke sore and unsettled. The events of the night seemed foggy, but the fear rooted itself deep inside him. He ate little, rushing through a tasteless breakfast before making a decision. He needed answers, answers he wouldn't find within these haunted walls. He pulled on his best coat, frayed and tired, and set out for Blackwood, the town nearest to the old Moorfield estate. The road to Blackwood twisted through fog-drenched trees. The stillness around him was broken only by the occasional rustle of dead leaves. The fog was thinning, slowly revealing the browns and golds of the Massachusetts woods. But still, Jonathan glanced back every few steps, chilled by a sense of being followed. Blackwood appeared as a textbook New England town, wooden homes hugging tight streets, a white church steeple rising like a sentinel, and a central square that served as the town's pulse. Jonathan stepped into the general store. Conversations halted. Dozens of curious eyes locked on him. "Good morning," he said evenly. "My name is Jonathan Moorfield. I've just inherited the estate outside of town." "A Moorfield?" the storekeeper said gruffly, a burly man with graying hair. "We haven't had one of you back here in a long while." "Not since the tragedy with your father," murmured an elderly woman, crossing herself. Jonathan's throat tightened. "That's exactly why I'm here. I discovered some journals and documents, but much of my family's past remains a mystery." An uneasy silence fell upon the room. After a moment, the man behind the counter spoke. "I'm Harold Simmons. Knew your father, your grandfather too." He studied Jonathan carefully. "You favor them." "I need to know what happened to them, Mr. Simmons. Why does the name Moorfield provoke such fear here?" There was a pause. The customers shifted. Some averted their gaze. Others quietly shook their heads. Harold gave a heavy sigh. "Come on, this isn't a conversation for everyone's ears." He led Jonathan through a narrow hallway to a private office. The walls were lined with papers and dusty filing cabinets. Harold motioned for him to sit before closing the door. The Moorfields came to Blackwood in 1790. Elijah Moorfield had big dreams, ambitious, educated, maybe too much so. He bought land from the natives, against their warnings. "What warnings?" Jonathan asked, his father's diary fresh in his mind. "The Wampanoag called that place the land of hungry spirits, said it was a gate to something ancient, something not meant to be disturbed." Harold rubbed his temple. But Elijah didn't believe in that sort of thing. He dismissed it all. "What happened after that?" "It followed the pattern," Harold said grimly. "Solitude, whispers of odd behavior. Elijah became obsessed with the mansion's lower levels. He experimented, dug deeper. They say he found something that changed him forever. Jonathan's voice lowered. The black stone. Harold looked up sharply. So you've seen it? I've read about it in the diaries, but I don't know what it really is or what it's doing to my family. Harold leaned back, face tight. No one does. Some claim it's from the stars, others say it's a relic of the old world. But whatever it is, it's cursed every Moorfield who stayed too long. He pulled a faded newspaper clipping from his desk. This is what happened to your father. It was dated October 15th, 1865. It detailed how William Moorfield had murdered 2 workers with an axe before hanging himself in the attic. The walls were marked in blood with incomprehensible symbols. His diary referenced contact with something from beyond.
"My mother never told me this," Jonathan whispered, his stomach churning. "She said it was illness." "She was trying to protect you," Harold replied softly. "She left and never looked back. Everyone thought the curse had died with her leaving." I exhaled. "But now I've returned." "Yes," Harold's expression was serious. "And I must ask, have you felt anything strange since you arrived? Heard voices, seen things that shouldn't be there?" Jonathan paused, unsure how much to reveal. "Why do you ask that?" "Because the Moorfield curse follows a pattern. It starts with small things, unexplained."
Objects had started to move on their own. Books left in one room appeared in another, and the eerie sound of voices drifting up from the basement haunted his nights. Harold leaned forward, eyes grave. "If it's already started, you need to get out of that house, now." "I can't just abandon my inheritance," Jonathan replied, his voice firm with quiet desperation. "It's the only thing I have left." Harold's tone deepened. "Your inheritance isn't just the estate. It includes the burden your bloodline carries." Before Jonathan could respond, a knock came at the office door. A woman, around 30, stepped in, her brown hair tightly bound, thin-framed glasses perched on her nose, and sharp eyes that missed little. "Father, Dr. Blackwood is here for his order," she said, only then noticing Jonathan. Her expression shifted with surprise. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had company." "Eleonora, meet Jonathan Moorfield. Mr. Moorfield, my daughter Eleonora Simmons." "Moorfield?" she echoed, studying him with fresh curiosity. "From the Moorfield estate?" Jonathan nodded and stood. "Yes, pleased to meet you, Miss Simmons." "Eleonora works at the library," Harold said, proudly. "She's our local historian, knows more about Blackwood's past than anyone." "I've actually been studying the Moorfield family for my thesis on behavioral anomalies in isolated lineages across New England." Jonathan's hope ignited. "Then maybe you can help me. I need answers about what happened to my family." "I'd be glad to," she offered warmly. "Meet me at the library this afternoon. I can show you what I've gathered." Jonathan felt a rare sense of relief. Finally, someone willing to discuss the truth. After leaving Harold's office, he spent the morning stocking up non-perishables, candles, kerosene for the old lamps, and even a revolver from the town's gun shop. A strange pressure in his chest told him he'd need it. By 2 o'clock, he arrived at the Blackwood Municipal Library, a modest brick building with long windows and creaky wooden floors. Eleonora led him into a quiet study room in the back, where she had arranged a collection of aged books, handwritten notes, and sepia-toned photographs on a heavy table. "I started this research 3 years ago," she began, pushing her glasses up. "What started as a case study in hereditary illness quickly became something
different. How so? Jonathan asked, glancing over the neat columns of data. It's the patterns, she said, the symptoms and the timing. They don't follow the usual fluctuations seen in genetic mental disorders. With the Moorfield men, it's unnervingly consistent. Each generation, same age, same progression. She slid a timeline toward him. Names, years, grim notations. Elijah, Samuel, William. But here's the strange part, Eleonora continued. The pattern only appears in those who stayed at the mansion. Men who left Blackwood, like your great-uncle Thomas, lived normal lives, untouched. Jonathan's stomach tightened. You think the mansion is the cause? It's one theory I can't rule out, she admitted. Environmental toxins were tested for, especially after your father's passing in 1870, but nothing came up. She paused, visibly uneasy. What else is there? Jonathan asked, bracing himself. There are unofficial accounts, she said softly, opening a folder of testimonies. Servants, doctors, neighbors, many described things that defy explanation. She laid out the first account. Martha Jenkins, housekeeper in the 1850s, claimed to hear voices from the basement when no one was present. Dr. Thomas Blackwood, your grandfather's physician, wrote of shadows that moved against the light. She handed him an old photo of the mansion taken in 1860. Look at the attic window. Jonathan squinted, and his heart nearly stopped. A pale figure stared out. The face was disturbingly similar to his own.
Is that my grandfather? He asked, voice hushed. Eleonora shook her head. No. Hotel records prove he was in Boston that day. The house was supposed to be empty. His hands trembled as he returned the photo. What do you think is really going on in that house? Eleonora hesitated, then replied carefully. As a historian, I rely on facts, but from what I've seen, I believe something exists in the Moorfield mansion, something beyond science. The stone in the basement, Jonathan whispered. Eleonora's eyes widened in shock. You've seen it? A black stone that feels alive? She grabbed her notebook and scribbled rapidly. Your ancestors mentioned it, but I've never met anyone who's seen it firsthand. I need to know if anyone ever survived it, anyone who broke free. Eleonora flipped through her records. There was one, your great-granduncle James. In 1837, he showed early symptoms, but instead of staying, he sought help, unconventional help. What kind? Jonathan asked, leaning in. He found a Wampanoag healer, Sarah Pequot. She was said to have inherited ancient knowledge. James left the house for months. When he came back, he was different, stable. And he lived a normal life? Jonathan asked. Until the age of 67, Eleonora confirmed, but he left no record of what she did, and she passed away in 1845. Does she have any descendants? Eleonora nodded slowly. Rumor says her great-granddaughter still lives on the reservation nearby. Her name is Ruth Pequot. They say she keeps the old ways alive. Jonathan stood, resolute. I have to find her. Eleonora placed a hand lightly on his arm. Before you do, have the symptoms already started? Jonathan hesitated, then answered truthfully. Last night I heard voices. I saw things that couldn't be real. Eleonora's face drained of color. Then it's already begun, much faster than I expected. What does that mean?
Symptoms usually start after several weeks, but you've only been there a few days." She grew quiet. "Unless what? Unless the presence is no longer dormant. It's getting stronger, more eager." She hurriedly packed her papers. "Mr. Moorfield, I don't think you should go back to the mansion tonight." "I have no choice," Jonathan said. "All my belongings are there, and I have no money for lodging." Story will continue in second video.